There's a big debate around A-Life in Stalker 2. Some say the old games had a true living world, others say it's nostalgia shaped by mods like Anomaly and Gamma. But this isn't the real question. The real question is simple: does the zone actually feel alive when you're playing Stalker 2? A-Life was never about technical complexity, it was about belief. It was about trust. And after testing encounters, revisiting cleared areas, forcing repositioning, and pushing the AI limits, I don't think the issue is that A-Life doesn't exist, it's that it doesn't consistently feel like it remembers what happened. In the original trilogy, A-Life wasn't magic, it wasn't a perfect simulation, it was a world that kept running through a layered system. NPCs traveled between camps, checkpoints, and hunting zones called smart terrains, rather than full real-time simulation, but the results persisted. They fought, died, looted weapons, and sometimes completed side objectives without your involvement. Outside your loaded area, their behaviour was simplified and resolved in the background and switched to full AI when you entered their space. You could arrive late to a firefight and see bodies already on the ground. You could take a contract and find the target dead. Outcomes were resolved through structured logic. That persistence built belief. AI could pick up better weapons from the ground and switch to them, meaning lower tier stalkers could upgrade their firepower. Armor, however, was mostly fixed to NPC type and loadout. They did not dynamically swap suits in vanilla. Only Clear Sky introduced structured faction wars where territory could change hands. Shadow of Chernobyl and Call of Pripyat featured faction clashes, but not the full zone-wide conquest. Most of what players remember as constant war came from dense patrol overlap inside smaller, segmented maps. Those segmented maps mattered. Tighter areas meant higher density, and higher density made the AI boundary less visible. NPC identity also persisted. Many stalkers had names, ranks, and tracked positions. If they survived, you could encounter the same individual in a different region later. Recognition reinforced the feeling that the world extended beyond you. A-Life worked not because it simulated everything, but it's because it maintained identity, outcome, and movement long enough to feel continuous. To be clear, Stalker 2 does a lot right. The map is massive and seamless, the atmosphere is strong, patrols move across terrain, mutants roam, firefights break out, you can follow squads and observe behaviour in real time. The foundation is there and the systems are running, but scale changes expectations. When the world becomes this large, activity alone is not enough. What matters is whether that activity continues and leaves visible results. After repeatedly testing Duga and other contested areas, a pattern became clear. Clear a Merc squad fighting Snorks, loot the bodies, leave the region, then return shortly after. Another faction appears in similar positions, often recreating the same engagement, sometimes with the Snorks who had killed the previous squad. It doesn't happen everywhere, but it happens enough to expose the pattern. That's the reset effect. Encounters feel triggered rather than lived in. Instead of squads having long journeys across the map, they can feel like repeatable encounter points. Sometimes they can lose their way and veer off in another direction. If a squad dies, it should matter. If two factions clash off screen, you should later find corpses, strip gear, or territory changes. Results create memory. Without results, the zone feels reactive instead of self-moving. The repositioning test exposes the next layer. Engage with enemies, break contact, climb to a high ground, and try to re-angle the fight. In certain situations, the enemies are simply gone, not retreating, not flanking, gone. This is the AI boundary becoming visible. The binocular issue connects directly to this. In older games, scouting mattered because the world was large enough to plan around. In Stalker 2, once you understand the effective AI range, long-distance scouting loses value because NPCs only truly exist inside a limited radius. Encounters also often begin to close combat distance, mainly near points of interest. You approach a structure and enemies form within engagement range. Even if technically simulated, that's close formation makes events feel designed rather than discovered. A-Life works best when you walk into something already happening, not when combat regularly starts just outside your view. Before we move on, I'll break down the infamous 100-meter spawn bubble, how it works, why it likely exists for performance reasons, and exactly where it damages immersion. That needs a full breakdown on its own. Combat trust is another pressure point in the trilogy. Enemies flinched, stumbled, and visibly weakened when wounded. Even mutants like the Bloodsucker here In Stalker 2, combat is mechanically smoother but can feel less responsive. Enemies can absorb rounds with limited visual reaction unless the hit is lethal. Suppression does not always reduce accuracy, and retreat behaviour is limited. If I were this guy in the zone and saw 8 snorks, I would run the other way. Concealment, especially through foliage and partial cover, can feel inconsistent. When enemies maintain near perfect tracking through heavy cover, fights become damage trades rather than tactical positioning. Stronger stagger reactions, clearer limb damage, effects, suppression that lowers accuracy, and more reliable retreat behaviour would reinforce combat trust. Combat does not need to be slower, it needs to feel like damage changes behaviour. So what's still missing? Not infinite AI, not some mythical prototype system. What's missing is consistency. The zone does not always seem to remember what just happened. Stalker 2 clearly has factions and regional identity. Certain areas belong to different factions and mutants. Hostility changes based on quest decisions. Story choices affect how factions treat you, but that influence really exerts outward pressure on the map as a whole as you progress through the campaign. Territory does not gradually shift, patrol density does not clearly reflect long-term success or failure. Areas feel assigned rather than contested over time. If a patrol dies, it should thin out that route for a while. If a faction loses multiple squads near a checkpoint, its presence should feel weaker until it rebuilds. If one group gains control of a region through story progression, you should see stronger equipment, tighter formations, and more organized movement. Even small changes in density would create the sense of a local power balance. Off-screen resolution also needs stronger follow-through. If gunfire echoes across a valley and you ignore it, something about that space should reflect the outcome later. Fewer bodies are replaced immediately, different weapons left behind, a camp is partially abandoned. When events leave no lasting mark, encounters feel temporary. Movement between regions feel compressed. The world is large, but long-distance patrol transitions are not always visible. Not constant combat, just quiet travel, squads relocating, mutants drifting between zones, and actively that continues whether you are there or not. When that motion is limited to a tight radius, the world feels centered on the player instead of existing independently. Binoculars tied directly into this. Scouting should reveal more in that immediate combat. You should be able to identify patrol strength, spot reinforced checkpoints, observe faction build-up near contested structures, and adjust your route accordingly. If AI presence were to extend further at low simulation cost, surveillance would regain crucial weight. Communication could strengthen the loop. PDA chatter about squad being wiped out near a bridge, reports of increased patrols on a northern road, warnings of mutant migration that match visible population shifts, and when you later confirm those reports yourself, belief increases. This is not about adding entirely new mechanics, it's about extending the reach and duration of ones already there. The foundation exists, what's missing is how far those systems push outward and how long their effects remain visible. The original trilogy used segmented maps that allow denser world activity in each area. Stalker 2 is seamless and the map is much larger, which forces trade-offs between performance and world depth. Scale and presentation currently take priority, that isn't wrong, but when players say AI feels missing, they usually mean the world does not feel wide-reaching enough, not that it doesn't exist at all. Stalker 2 has movement, it has a roaming squads, it has patrols, crossing terrain, and mutants wandering the map. Firefights break out, systems are running, the foundation is real, what's missing is memory. The world does not always remember what happened 5 minutes ago. Squads can feel temporary instead of long-term. Fights can be resolved rather than leaving lasting marks. Scouting can lose value once you understand the AI boundary, and so this is not about A-Life being absent, it's about how far it reaches and how long it affects last. If you want to carry on finding out how A-Life is in Stalker 2 in 2026, check out this fast review.